Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, and welcome into another duly noted podcast presented by our good friends at Titan MRI and coming to you from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios here at my house. Got a great show for you today. Chris Lowe is going to join us. We set up Chris Lowe to be on the show. Have no idea that he was going to break the story that Nick Saban's leaving. So we'll have him on to talk about that. And then, of course, Monday, Coach Spurrier will be here, and he'll be talking about Nick Saban leaving and also about the other things that have happened in the world of coaching. And then the following Thursday, Andrea Adelson will join us. So good shows coming up for you, as always, here on another duly noted podcast. Let us get to our process service of Gainesville. Starting five, brought to you by the good folks at Process Service of Gainesville. Scott Hart does a great job over there, and we appreciate him being the sponsor of the Starting Five. It's funny because last night I'm watching the Florida basketball game, and I'm like, if Florida wins this game, did I make that the number one story or the number two story? Because Saban and everything. Now, I will get to the men's basketball game. I didn't have to worry about them winning, by the way. Later, it'll be the last item, just to tell you ahead of time with all the stuff that's going on. Let's start off with number one on the Process Service of Gainesville Starting Five, and that is the three coaches that have all left within a 24-hour period that just seemed crazy. Saban, Belichick, and of course, Pete Carroll. Now, two of them got fired, basically. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You parted ways. Yeah. I don't want you to be here when I come in tomorrow. That's how we're going to part ways. Pack your suitcase. But anyway, it doesn't matter. They go down as legends. And I'll start with Saban on number one, and that is how I learned how to like Nick Saban. I didn't at first. I was like a lot of Gator fans did. A lot of Gator fans, he made Tebow cry. Now, he didn't do it personally, but his whole goal that year was to beat Florida and beat Tebow, have a plan for Tebow. But I just love the way he was able to reinvent himself, to change, to do things. In the end, though, college football pushed the greatest college football coach out. And that's the way I see it. And we'll talk to Chris about this too later. But, there's just so much going on that it drove him crazy. And I think it's just, it is kind of a young man's game. I hate to say it now. It is kind of a young man's game. Like you got to be able to deal with all this NIL and all this transfer portal and all this. It's not even a young man's game. It's a many man's game. You got to have a million people like Florida does. Now, they need to win some games and get better at what they're doing, but that's not for today's show. I really got to where I like Nick Saban, especially too, for our golf tournament every year, we got a helmet from Alabama. Now that was especially a big deal when they won the national championship those years. I'll never know whether they were actually signed by Nick Saban. I later was told that Nick doesn't sign those helmets. They've got somebody that knows his signature and he does it. And then I was told by somebody that he doesn't know where they're going. So I'm not saying he sent them to me, but we got them every year. I think for 10 years, probably at least got them. And a lot of time, Will Muschamp was in the middle of that, getting that done. So that made a lot. But look, this guy is everybody always wants to talk about how they should make him the commissioner of football, since football is rudderless right now. And it's a mess, and it is a gigantic mess, and it's why he got out, and I don't blame him. It's trying to push me out, let alone Nick Saban. Nick Saban's got all the money in the world. He doesn't need to keep doing that. He doesn't need to keep being a coach. And he's got his everything else going on. His what has he got? Three Mercedes dealerships, all his commercials. It's not like he's not going to stay busy. He's going to be like me, retiring, but not retiring. And that's that except he's going to do it at a much higher level. You know, when he goes to give your the people over at I was trying to think of I should think of a name of one of our sponsors, what the process service of Gainesville folks, or the Hesser and Kipke folks. If he's going to give you a speech, it's going to be $30,000. Okay, so and there'll be plenty of calling for that to do corporate speaking engagements and everything. He's going to be fine. Nobody's worried about him, but I do worry about the game. All right, let's get to number 2 on the process service of Gainesville starting 5, and that would be Belichick. News coming out this morning. As soon as I woke up, I saw it. And I went, man, how many times am I going to say, wow, this week? And I don't know if it's over yet. I mean, there could be more coming on. But that had been rumored because, look, it wasn't working anymore in New England. And could it work somewhere else? Yeah, there's no doubt. If he goes to the right place with a quarterback. But I will say this, his selection of players in the last few years has not been great. They're clearly, when their special teams fall off, he loves special teams, and maybe his heart's not. Maybe it just got old being their coach, and maybe he wants to go do something somewhere else. Or maybe he just wants to retire. I don't know how he retires but again, I think he'll be coaching somewhere. I do get offended when people always say this, well, it wasn't Belichick, it was Brady. No, come on, man. In the first place, Belichick put players around Tom Brady to make him great. And they weren't always the guys that everybody else would have taken. In the case of Randy Moss, it was. But, it was the Edelmans and guys like that, Amendola. And so he put guys around them and made them great. And he picked him, way down there in the draft. He saw something in him. He made him better. Damon Woody was telling this story today about how he needed to lose weight, and Belichick got him into a weight loss clinic and kept coming and visiting him and telling him how good he could be if he could just get his weight off and doing things like that. And of course, Belichick would be in Gainesville every once in a while because he and Urban were good friends. So I remember seeing him at a game, and I'm like, that is so weird to see Bill Belichick at a Florida basketball game. But I started to walk over I'm going to walk over and I'm going to introduce myself to Bill Belichick. That's something you need to do, Pat. He's one of the biggest names in sports. And as I'm walking over, I go, probably shouldn't do that. I should probably just say, hi, Urban, how are you? Who's your friend? No, I probably shouldn't do that. By the time I got over there, I just nodded at Urban and walked right into the press room. He intimidated me. He intimidated a lot of people. The part I don't like him is just, you don't have to be a jerk at press conferences. He decided he's going to be a jerk his whole life at press conferences. I don't particularly care for that. But the NFL is certainly a different world too. And, he obviously wasn't getting it done anymore. And like anybody else, when you aren't getting it done, it's time to move on. I think it was probably mutual, that he knew that it wasn't working for him anymore, and that they knew he wasn't working for them, that Robert Kraft knew that. So let's move on to number 3 on the process service of Gainesville starting 5, and that would be Pete Carroll, who started this whole thing off and never realized that by the end of the day, yesterday or today, I guess, he would be on 3B. Nobody cares that Pete Carroll's retiring or parted ways again, leaving Seattle. I was kind of a Pete Carroll. I hated him with the USC. I rooted against USC. I've got to learn. I got to get better at that. I got to forgive some of these things anyway, that's me. I got to work on me a little bit, but I didn't like him there. But then when he got to the NFL, I kind of liked him. I liked some of the things that he was doing. I liked that program. I liked Sean Alexander. I liked the colors, and so I rooted for the Seahawks and kind of Did for a long time till they got bad, and then I quit rooting. Because I don't, like I've told you, I don't have an NFL team. There are 32 teams in the NFL. 16 of them I like, 16 of them I don't like. And so it's a matter of, if you're playing each other, I probably am going to watch a game. But anyway, won a Super Bowl, should have won two, obviously. Screwed that one up. Did always like him though. He was a guy that I really cared about. I'm looking around here because I guess the trash guy's coming finally. They're a little late today. But I wanted to make sure nobody was like ramming my car with something, because sometimes you never know. All right, so that's the story with Pete Carroll. But it was funny that yesterday when that happened. So that happens, and I'm going in to do the radio show, and when the news broke, I just remember saying, "What? Are you kidding me, Pete Carroll?" I get in to do the radio. We're an hour into the show, and Jeff goes, "Well, you like wow moments. You're not going to believe this one," and tells me about Saban. And then I wake up this morning, wow. So it's been a weird few days. Changed the landscape of football. Really is. So the number 4 thing on process service of Gainesville, starting 5, who takes their place? Where does Saban go? You assume Saban's going to take it complete. He's done. He's not going to coach anymore. But what if an NFL team said, "Hey, we'll give you a lot of money, and you don't even have to do the." You can. I don't think that is. But where does Belichick go? Where does Pete Carroll go? Do they continue to coach? Are they happy with it? A lot of people think Mike Vrabel will be the next coach at New England, but I don't know. He's kind of a jerky guy, and of course, so is Belichick. One jerk for another. There's just a lot of people there that I don't know how they're going to look at it. They're going to have to move pretty quickly on this, and that's why they made this move now, because there are 8 openings now in the NFL. 8, count them, 8. So, and this is not atypical of the NFL. I mean, it's what they do. So you've got now. I would think Dan Quinn's going to get a job out of this. He'll get back into being a head coach. It's got to be the right one, and I wouldn't take certain jobs. I wouldn't take the Redskins job, for example. I would take it something like the Chargers is obviously the one you're going to get a great quarterback, and that gives you a starting point. I think there's a lot of people interested in that one. Also, so maybe Dan Quinn goes to Seattle. I mean, he's got ties there, obviously, coach there. Maybe he goes to Seattle as their head coach. A lot of people believe Dan Lanning will be the next coach at Alabama. I personally think that is the best hire that they can make. I do, and I was thinking about this with DeBoer, the coach at Washington, would be a great hire, but I don't think Alabama fans think that's sexy enough. Dan Lanning, maybe they think it's sexy enough, but the bottom line is, I wouldn't wish that on Dan Lanning. He seems like a pretty good dude. I like the guy. He's a really good coach, and he goes there and goes 10-2, and they're going to run him out of town. I mean, you're not like Saban. Until we'll see what happens. But, people have brought up every name in the book. I mean, Urban's name is going to come up for that job, believe it or not. But he's not coaching anymore. But it's going to be interesting. You got 8 openings there. You've got a major opening in the SEC. There's a lot going on. The news never stops. Have you noticed that? Every day there's new news. Must be because you're not yesterday's news. You're today's news. All right. And finally, number 5, Florida basketball. Now, I watched the game last night. It was not good. They played absolutely no defense. I thought that Coach Golden said put the perfect way when he said we played atrocious defense. I thought that was the best quote until I saw Walter Clayton Jr. said they just punked us. And they did. Florida hasn't played defense all year, though. They're not very good on defense. Even the games where they block a lot of shots, they're still not. They're giving up way too many easy points, too many points to the basket. You give up 103 last night, which is crazy, and they blocked 16 shots, and you still got to 80. What was it, 85 points? And they blocked 16 shots, but that triggers offense too. So. It just wasn't good. And the full court pressure got to him. First road game for a lot of these guys playing in the SEC. Okay. Discouraging, I would say. It was very discouraging to see that result and to watch that game. I thought Florida was better than that. But, they're pretty good. They've only lost one game. They did get destroyed in the one game they lost. You knew they'd come. That's the thing. And when Florida was playing Arkansas in football, I was thinking the same thing. Man, the last thing you want is for a team to come in that you think is a pretty decent team, and they come in off of a bad loss where they just didn't play well. Because the coach is going to get their attention. And you just have to do better, I guess. That's all you can do. So anyway, they shot 75% in the second half. Now, that's hard to do against air. When nobody guarding you, which pretty much is what it was. Nobody guarding them. Boys, you better get better on defense, because if you don't, it'll be a long season, a really long season. I will say this, too. Teams have started 0-2 in the SEC before and gone on and had great years. It's happened. I could look it up. I just know it's happened. I will look it up for next week, okay? How about that? All right, we are going to take a break right now. Come back with Chris Lowe from ESPN. You know him well. Broke the story on Nick Saban retiring, and we'll play Yes, No, Where, Maybe with him as well. This is another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios.
I was driving behind a lady, and very suddenly she moved out of the way. There was a log laying in the road, and when I hit my brakes, I went on top of the log. I had 280 discs. I just haven't been the same since. Jeffrey Meldon fought for me all the way. Him and his team really went there for me. Throughout the whole lawsuit, he made sure that my bills was paid. It was never no whenever I called him and asked him for something.
Call Meldon Law right now.
Process Service of Gainesville offers a rapid turnaround on affidavits of service for Gator lawyers locally and nationwide. Our friend Scott Hart offers immediate responses on status requests and is a member of NAPS and FAPS. And he has been a part of the community for almost 2 decades. Need service? Call Process Service of Gainesville at 407-697-9592 or email shartgators, that's G8TR, at yahoo.com. And make sure you ask about the paralegal legal secretary bonus program.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life. And the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Okay, and welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. We'll be back at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill on Monday with Coach Spurrier. We'll get his take on what's going on with all these coaches things. But when I talked to Chris Lowe about coming on the show Thursday, we had no idea we were going to be talking about the story he broke yesterday, which is the biggest story, I think. I know that Chris and ESPN people are playing, are bowing down to Belichick right now. But I mean, in the world of college football and the world that we live in the South, this is the biggest story that's come along in a long time.
Well, Pat, I mean, not just because I had it, because of the run Saban's had, man. We've both done this a long time. And do you think we'll ever see a run like that in college football in our lifetimes again?
Well, I mean, Kirby be the only one that could, I mean,
and he could. Kirby's got just a juggernaut going there at Georgia. But, it's just like the analogy I made yesterday, all those majors that Jack Nicklaus won, people forget about the second place finishes he had. Nick,
Right.
you think about the kick six in 2013. He lost in the championship game to Clemson twice. He was in the playoff a few other times. I mean, it could easily be 10 plus national titles that he has at this point. So I just think that the way he changed the game and the way he changed, I thought was most impressive with his career as he adapted. And even though he goes out at 72, I mean, nobody over the last 10 years, I thought, adapted or evolved any better than he did. And
I agree.
just a run, a coaching run that when you start talking about great college coaching runs in any sport, I mean, I guess the John Wooden UCLA era, and of course I'm showing my age here, back when he won 7 of 10 national titles in hoops, would be right there at the top, at least in the two main men's sports. But boy, what Nick did at Alabama is it's going to be a while before that's duplicated, if ever.
So when you get this information, how fast were your fingers dialing the phone at ESPN?
Well, in this day and age, man, of the immediacy of social media, I mean, you never know. And I guess I'm a geezer, man. I don't. This sounds crazy, and people that are younger in our profession look at me like I've got 3 heads when I say this. I don't scour Twitter all day. I guess it's X now, right? X.
I call it Twitter. Yeah.
I don't. If Pat Dooley tells me something, and he's a good source, and I trust him, then I call my office and I tweet it. I don't go online and look and see if 2 other people have had it a minute earlier or if I had it 2 minutes before somebody else. If I get good information from people I trust, then I go with it. But I knew enough about that situation that he had just told his players, and all players are on social media. So I knew it was getting ready to get out pretty fast. So to answer your question, they were going pretty fast to make sure I got it out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, now were you surprised when you got the information? I mean, we all knew that this was a possibility, but I think after the great job he did of coaching this team and getting the most out of this team that was possible, I think we all figured, well, he's energized, ready to come back for another year.
No, I think he's thought about this for the last couple of years. I think the process has been the same. He and his wife Terry always go away for those few days after the last season. They go to, I guess they have a home now down in Florida. Jupiter, I think, is where they bought a new place. And
all the cool people live down here, okay?
That's right.
And then they're hot all summer.
Maybe I can get you to get me in touch with your real estate agent.
Yeah, I think it's Lisa Spurrier, to be honest with you.
I can't even get Coach Spur to buy me a meal at his restaurant, let alone put me in touch with his real estate agent. But now Jerry would, but Steve would, for the record. No, I think they go off. Nick and Terry have for the last few years, and they discuss where they are in their lives and his career, and what's in front of him. So this has been something they've been through the last couple of years, and I think this was a year that he just felt like, had a chance to talk to him this morning. That at his age, and you know him, he's not going to, Pat. He's not going to scale back, man, and do it. Bring in somebody else to help him or be more of a CEO kind of guy. He's going to do it one way, the only way he knows how. And I think the more he thought about it, the more he talked to people, players, staff, and he was doing interviews an hour with coaches an hour before he announced it. I think he'd already finalized his decision by then, but he's going to work right up to the very end. In his mind, he could not give 100% what he wanted to give to the players in the program. And, he's still pretty healthy, but he's 72. And he said this was a harder year for him. 14-hour days, he said, are a heck of a lot harder at 72 than they are at 62. And he just said it's time for me to let somebody else come in and take a shot at it. I know he wants to have and wanted to have enough quality of life left when he finished his coaching football. And again, these are things he told me. I'm not just speculating. To do things he wants to do. He and his wife, he's got grandkids. He loves to play golf. He went over to Italy this past summer for 10 days, which is the longest he's ever been away from football for that long. He told me he really enjoyed that trip. He owns a couple golf courses. He owns a couple dealerships, Mercedes and Ferrari. So he's got a lot of interest And I think more than anything, though, he's his dad died very young. I think at 45 or something like that. And he wants to be able to do some things and experience some things in life that he simply hasn't been able to this point because he just was, quote unquote, such a football junkie that he just never could prime a way to do a lot of those things.
Yeah, I mean, we know that he was, and he was crazy about the attention to detail and making sure his players understood that. Like he said, this is not a crystal ball, it's a Coke bottle up here. But I can't predict the future, but I can try to define it. I can try to make it the best it can be. I mean, I always admired the guy. I liked him a lot, and I think the best year that Nick Saban ever had was during the COVID year, because all the recruiting videos got leaked out on Twitter, and you could see how he would sell a kid, and you would go, "I'll go play for you. I'll go right now, coach. I'll go do whatever you need me to do." I mean, that just told me how dynamic he is in a room with people.
Well, he is. He's a quintessential leader, and when he walks in, there's a presence about him that I don't care if you're 18 years old or 68 years old, you're male, female, different parts of the country, different cultures. I mean, he resonates the way he carries himself. I mean, there's a video out there. I would encourage any kid who thinks they've got a chance to go play college ball, certainly pro ball, to go look at it. And he talks about and players and but players. And it's really simple, but he says, don't give anybody a reason, whether you're going to be a football player or you're going to try to get a job in a law firm, to be a but person. He's this, he's that, but he's late to meetings, but he had a positive drug test, but he had an issue with his girlfriend. Be an and player. He's a great football player, does this, and he's 10 minutes early for meetings, and he's well liked by everybody in the locker room, and he makes straight A's in the classroom. And that really applies, Pat, to all walks of life, to be honest with you. And I told a kid recently, a kid that I had sort of mentored and helped coach basketball when he was younger, who's in college, I said, go look at this video and call me back and tell me, are you an and player or a but player? And that's sort of the way, you talked about his messaging, the way he talked to people. But he would take things that seemingly are very simple and break them down in layman's terms like that, and made a lot of sense for a lot of people.
Absolutely, he did. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk about who's going to take his place. And I think the top one in terms of the betting is Dan Lanning. I don't know that I'd wish that on Dan Lanning going into that crowd of people, because you can't be. I don't know. It could be hard. It can be hard for whoever follows Steve Spurrier. Remember they went to Stoops and Shanahan, then settled on Zook. It's hard to follow great coaches like that.
Impossible. I mean, how many
Especially
guys
at Alabama.
how many guys have done it? You mentioned Spurrier. Tom Osborne at Nebraska. They promoted his assistant, who didn't do a bad job, but his biggest flaw was he was a Tom Osborne, and he didn't win 12 games every year. It's just rare that happens, Pat, that a legendary coach, a Hall of Fame coach, steps down and the guy that comes in behind him has, a lot of success. Barry Switzer at Oklahoma is another one. I mean, they went through, a really bad run there.
Who was the coach? Larry Blake? Was that the guy? Didn't he go
Howard Schnellenberger, I think, 11, was part of that run. I don't think it's going to be Lanning. In fact, I think Lanning has told some people that he's not interested, and he's got a good gig. They got tons of money, resources at Oregon. He's just getting started, and I think Dan's not a dummy. He's been in the SEC. He's worked there. He understands that going in behind Nick Saban is you talk about swimming upstream. And listen, Nick, the thing that I want to emphasize here is the program's in good shape. He lives it in good shape. They got a lot of good young players coming back. They recruited well, I think, in the transfer portal. Now, some of this may change over the next 30 days because kids have a chance now to jump in the portal if they want to. I don't know what this does to the recruiting class, but it's in good shape. And it's this may have been
Yeah, they should have won. They should have
Yeah.
won the national championship.
They give up one drive on defense in the second half, and it's the drive that beats them. They completely shut Michigan down. But to Michigan's credit, they got it done when they needed to. But this was not Nick's most talented team. They had talent. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they were playing with the guys that were a bunch of 3-stars. They had a bunch of good players who people wanted. But he's had, as you know, having covered the league as long as you have, he's had a lot better teams, a lot more complete teams, and a lot more depth. It's hard. And this is not just Bama, but the thing that's going to be fascinating going forward everywhere is who does the best job of maintaining and creating depth in the portal era with guys coming and going. Because if I'm the sixth offensive lineman at Alabama or Florida or Ohio State or Texas, and I think maybe there's 4 or 5 guys that are going to play in front of me the next year, but I'm a really good player, well, then I'm bolting. And offensive line is a good example because how many times, Pat, do you finish the season with the same 5 offensive line?
All right.
And that's where I think championships are going to be won. Look at Michigan. Michigan won the title this year with an offensive line that played great when it counted. But guess what? They were missing their best guy. Zach Zenner, their guard, got hurt against Ohio State. And without him, they still win over Washington and Alabama. So to me, that's depth. That's the difference maker and will be the difference maker. And it was harder for Saban to maintain and create the kind of depth he had there over the years for obvious reasons. And I think that caught up to him a little bit. But I don't see that program is depth. They're still as formidable, and I think will be a top 5 team. And with it going to 12 teams, it as you know, it's going to sort of change the game a little bit because you can have a hiccup, maybe even 2 in the SEC if you don't lose to bad teams and still have a chance to get into the playoff.
Yeah. So I mean, does Lane Kiffin have a shot at that job?
No, I don't think so. I think Lane would like to have it, but I don't think he's going to get it. I really think right now, if you talk about 2 names that I think would probably be at or near the top of the list, it'd be DeBoer at Washington and Mike Norvell there at Florida State. I think those are 2 guys.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're the 2 front runners, but they're certainly 2 guys that will be prominent in that conversation.
I don't know if DeBoer is sexy enough for Alabama fans. You know what I mean? I mean, they're aware of what he's doing out there, but a lot of it's gone on and they don't even know. They're watching SEC football, but I think he'd be do a great job there. And Norvell, I mean, we know what the thing about Norvell was they had to give him time to build that roster, and he did it. But at Alabama, he won't really have to build it. And they're not going to give him time to do it.
No, it's you're 1,000% right. And Mike would inherit a much better situation at Alabama than he did at Florida State. And I think the fact that Florida State's been so outspoken about wanting to leave the SEC or ACC, and I don't know, frankly, I don't know where their landing spot is. I guess we're going to find out if there is one. If you're Norvell and Bama comes after you and they offer you $10 million plus, that's probably pretty tough to turn down. And I think that would be one. And I don't think Mike would leave for a lot of jobs. He's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into getting Florida State to where they are right now. But Alabama, even though you're having to follow a guy like Saban, would be a hard one to say no to. And I think DeBoer has done such a really good job at Washington. In fact, they play on the West Coast. People in the SEC are in bed most of the times when they play their games. But if you watch them play and how electric they have been on offense and really probably underrated on defense, he's not been a guy that's been around the SEC, but I do think he checks a lot of boxes in this day and age. So I think those are 2 guys. And, Sarkisian would certainly be a guy that you would think they would call, but if you're Sarkisian, you're already going to the SEC. Texas is moving to the SEC. You're making tons of money, and I'm sure that he could parlay if he wanted to a raise out of this. I know Nick Saban really, really respected Sarkisian as a coach. Felt like he was outstanding, and that would carry a lot of weight. But I just don't know.
He's already got all the
to leave Texas.
He's already got all the NIL money he wants. He's got. They're getting plenty of salary. The expectations are great, but they're not Alabama great. They're not that crazy out of whack. But all right, it is time for us to play Yes, Nowhere, Maybe with Chris Lowe. It comes to you on the Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line. Big Mills Cheesesteak, go in there, say you were listening or watching another Dooley Noted podcast, and you get free fries with your order. How about that? So, yes, no way, or maybe. Number one, Belichick coaches in the NFL again. Imagine if you're Pete Carroll and you went, I'm going to get fired, and it'll be the biggest story in the history of football. And you're like on 3B now.
Yeah, I go yes. I don't think Bill wants to go out this way. I just can't see him leaving on this note. So I go yes on Belichick coaching in the NFL again.
All right, number two on Yes, No Way, or Maybe. The last shoe has not fallen yet. Harbaugh. And will it fall?
Yes, I think he will be coaching in the NFL next
Really?
year. I think that's his next horizon. I think it's been something that's been on his radar for a while. And you talk about a way to go out. He gets back to his alma mater. He gets him back to a national championship. It took him a while, but he's done it. He's had success in the NFL before, Pat. I think that's going to be his next challenge. His dad himself said the guy loves challenges. He loves taking on different challenges. And to me, now going from leading your alma mater to a national title and potentially winning a Super Bowl or getting a team to the playoffs would be that next challenge.
Yeah, it is. It would be pretty amazing if Michigan and Alabama both opened up two teams that played in the semifinal. That would be. I don't know if we could handle all that. It'd just be too much. Finally, the last question for you on Yes, No Way, or Maybe. Chris Lowe from ESPN does such a great job. I call him the Bulldog. Okay, college football pushed Nick Saban out of college football. And by that, I mean where it is now, the NIL, with this craziness of the NIL. I know he's been angry about it many times and people buying players. And so did college football push him out of college football?
I go a maybe. I don't think it pushed him out. I think it was a factor, but not the factor. I mean, he's been frustrated. And when I talked to him this morning about it, he said, listen, I don't know any coach that's not frustrated with where we are right now and the lack of uniformity and the tampering that goes on in the portal and bidding for players out of high school and just the lack of structure. He said, but this is not me leaving now is not about that. He said, you got to be able to adapt. He said, and as you pointed out, he says, listen, it's been 3 years of this now and we're still winning. So it's not like I'm running away from anything or that's the reason I'm leaving. But I do think it was, I guess the best way I could say it, Pat, I don't think this version of college football was Nick Saban's favorite.
No, exactly. Nor is it my favorite, to be honest with you. But
whose is it?
The players.
I tell you, collectives and the players, attorneys, and agents are the one who likes it the best.
Yeah,
but you know what? Hey, fans are going to keep watching. This was the most watched college football season ever, and the people that say, and the get off my lawn type people, well, I'm not going to watch college football anymore. This is not the way they're going to keep watching. I love the game. You love the game. Do I love the way it's sort of transformed in the way it is right now? No, but I still love the game, and I love watching games on Saturdays, and I want to keep watching.
Chris, Florida's had 9 sellouts in the last 2 years for 2 losing teams. Okay, they had losing records, and they still sold it out. So, no, it's the game is the game is over. It may be idiot proof in the end. That may be the answer to it. I know who's not an idiot but is idiot proof because he doesn't listen to me very often, and that's you, Chris Lowe. And I appreciate your time. Is that a Bernard King jersey behind you there?
I've got actually Larry Bird and Bernard King. I don't know if you can see Birds. Both of them autographed, actually.
Is that right?
I don't have a lot of memorabilia. I'm a hoops guy from way back, and I love the again, I know I'm showing my age, but I love the 80s. The NBA in the 80s there was none better. I mean, it was so awesome, and love watching King play. That's actually a Tennessee jersey that somebody at Tennessee got for me. And then Birds is a Celtics jersey. But yeah, I don't have a lot, but my son got me both of them. And so those are the two. And there's I don't know if you can see, there's a caddy shack back there in the background, which little known trivia. Pat Dooley and I once played together the course there. I guess it was Rolling Hills Golf Club in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah,
where they
Emerald
filmed Caddyshack
Grand or something. Yeah,
and my memory of that round is you played a heck of a lot better than I did.
I won. I still have the trophy over here. So I was playing a little different. That was when I had all my limbs were mine. They hadn't been replaced with ceramic. But yeah, it was a fun day. And I've told this story before, but on every hole where what they filmed there would be a sign with the quote. And
that was awesome.
I think we laughed so hard that
the clubhouse, it looks, pretty much the same as it did when they filmed it. But that was, people say, what's some of the best things you've done in your career? Well, I don't really start with championship games. I start with playing around the golf with my buddy Pat Dooley at the course where they filmed the cult classic Caddyshack. And yes, if our buddy Steve Spurrier is watching, we putted every single putt out. Half a foot, didn't matter. Nobody moved the ball. There were no foot wedges. No, Judge Smell was not there to kick our ball back into the fairway. We played the ball as it lied, Coach. So I just want you to know that.
These are stories we were telling before we started the podcast. Chris, it's always great talking to you, buddy. Thank you so much for coming on board. I know you're really busy today, and I knew everybody wanted to hear right from the source, somebody who broke the story and talked to Coach Saban today. Big story. We'll be back with more of another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios right after we take this break. Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another Dooley Noted podcast. This is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Another Duly Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444. All right, welcome back to another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. Meldon Law, of course, the sponsor of Coach Spurrier, who will be in here on Monday. Or we'll be in the studio on Monday at Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. So look forward to that. Let us get to our Hesser and Kipke 3 things. And as you know, Hesser and Kipke is a Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of family law and workers' compensation. If you're a loyal listener of this show, you know who they are by now. And if not, Google the firm, check out the reviews, and hear what the clients have to say. Ken and Jennifer can be reached 24/7 via cell, call, or text at 352-339-9920. That is Hesser and Kipke. All right, so the 3 things are these, as I see them anyway. Number 1, if you wanted to see the Irrelevant Bowl, which was being put together, at least they were going to make an effort to it. They had to get it established by the NCAA. No soup for you. They said, we're not going to do that. Now, I wanted to look up and see who would have been playing in it. Like, who would you consider the worst two teams to play in it? And I mean, there's some easy answers there, but it would have been interesting to see. But why would I want to watch it? And the NCAA sent them back a letter and said, no, we're not going to condone mocking our teams, our programs. I think kids would have liked to play. This might have been their last chance to play football. But I wouldn't have watched it. I love football, but I'm like with football, it's like if Wyoming is playing New Mexico on August 25th, I will watch that game. If they're playing New Mexico on let's say, middle of November, I probably won't watch it. But if it's a good game, I may flip it on for a little bit. If they're playing after the season's already over, I'm not watching it for sure. I will watch Colossal again, which I was just watching today. Haven't seen that movie. It's different. It's good, though. I liked it. Anne Hathaway, Jason Sudeikis. Anyway, so there's no Irrelevant Bowl, and we'll never know the teams they were going to invite. Number 2 on Hesser and Kipke's 3 Things. What a night it was in college basketball last night. I know the Gators lost, but for a lot of teams lost, including in the last 2 days, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and 5 all lost games. Now you say, well, polls are irrelevant this time of year. Well, yeah, they are, but they're still really good teams. Don't think Purdue and Houston and Tennessee aren't good teams just because they lost. This happens in college basketball. But it was the first time in the history that 1, 2, 3, and 5 all lost in a 2-day period. First time in the history of the sport. And it's the first time in forever. I think it's 4th time all in history. I think the first time in 16 years or something, but the 4th time ever that 1, 2, and 3 lost. That is amazing. It's not surprising that it's the first, but it's just amazing that all of them lost. And I watched the Tennessee-Mississippi State game, and Mississippi State played really good. They got Tolu Smith back, who literally, I swear to God, Billy Donovan coached against Tolu Smith. I may have to look it up. I think he's in his 19th year. I know he is. Maybe it's because when he came out of nowhere as a freshman, you're like, whoa, but he's still there. But I don't know. It's amazing. Anyway, they won the game. All right, and then finally on the Hesser and Kipke 3 Things tonight, Florida women are playing at Tennessee. We'll see how that goes. They usually lose to the good teams and beat the bad teams, and that's an improvement. And they just got a couple of young ladies that were on the McDonald's All-American team. So she's slowly building this, and it's hard. I believe it's harder in women's basketball than any other sport. I may be way off. I think the pool is shallower in terms of the talent. There aren't a lot of, we always say there's not a lot of 6'6", 320-pound offensive linemen just walking around out there. No, yeah, there aren't, but there really aren't a lot of 6'6" basketball players walking around there with some skill. Women's basketball players. There are a lot of men, but there are not a lot of women's basketball players. And so the best get the best, and then you've got to find a way to work around it. Anyway, they play tonight, but I did want to mention also that tomorrow night, Florida opens its gymnastics season. Now, the teams are playing are just in fodder, brought in here to fill out a quad meet. But as you know, they're going to play a really tough schedule. But it'll be interesting to watch this team because it is a totally new team. Some of the young ladies are opting out of this year, and this is a different opt-out, so that they can train for the Olympics. You have to train differently for the Olympics. There are different things you have to do. Leanne Wong, for example, they're training her for the Olympics, but she's going to compete, but she's going to do things that may not help them. It is weird that you would train somebody that may not help you at all, but that's the way it works in gymnastics, and it's cool. They still got great talent. They had this great signing class come in. They're going to be good, really good. Are they going to be as good as last year? I don't know. I mean, they finished second in the country last year. That was pretty good. Done that before, as we know. But anyway, I did want to mention that they are starting tonight. It's a quad meet too, so you can see a lot of gymnastics. But most of all, you want to see the new young ladies for Florida and how well they do, and see how well Trinity Thomas coaches them, because she's a coach on that team. All right, that is our Hesser and Kipke 3 things. Let us move to our Leonardo's and Millhopper quick picks. The great folks over there at Leonardo's. Please order a Duels when you go in there. Say you listen to another Dooley Noted podcast. That's why you're doing it. It helps. It helps. I mean, they know that people are listening to it, but it helps. Always helps. All right, I'm gonna give you an easy one, and then I think maybe Thursday. What is today? Today's Thursday. I think maybe next Thursday we'll pull a winner. How about that? Next Thursday, we're pulling a winner, $25 at Leonardo's, and a copy of a book I wrote called Game of My Life, signed by me if you want to sign, not signed by me if you don't want it signed and want to keep it value where it is or resell it. Anyway, that is going to be, we're going to do that Thursday. And Andy, I'm going to get to yours too. Yours is coming. I've just been swamped. A lot of doctor's appointments, and there's going to be more. We'll talk about that down the road, but just trying to get things fixed. You know how that is. When you get to be this old, these things happen. All right, so our Leonardo's and Millhopper quick picks make it very simple for you. Arkansas at Florida, here in the swamp, if we call it the swamp. It does need a nickname. Sports Illustrated gave it that House of Horrors nickname, and it kind of lasted through that spell when Florida was good. But it's almost like since Florida's not been great again, I don't even think the 14 team, when they really talked about it being the House of Horrors, Billy Donovan Court. It needs a better nickname. I'm trying to think of a good one, but I call it. You have to go to the Billy. You don't go down to the Billy and win down there. Nah, that doesn't work. You don't go play at the Donovan. You don't go play at the Donovans. Maybe there's no good nickname. But anyway, just pick that game and get it in. You'll have one more chance on Monday to qualify for our contest to win $25 from the great folks at Leonardo's and a copy of my book. Let us move along to our Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the Week. And because I did this last week, I'm doing it again. But Walter Clayton got to 1,000 points. It was in a loss. We know that. But hey, I give him credit. Getting to 1,000 points. Anybody who gets to 1,000 points has a chance to be our Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the Weekend or Gator of the Week. I believe that strongly. And I do believe in Adams Ribco to Go too, because we just had some Wednesday night. No, Tuesday night. Tuesday night takeout order. I always get the same thing. And man, I don't know if I need to change. I always get the turkey. I love turkey. And I always get green beans, man. I'm a big believer. You can tell whether a restaurant's any good by the green beans, because if the green beans have little chunks of brisket in them and they're seasoned right, you're good to go. They know what they're doing. All right. That is our Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the Weekend. Let's get to this, that, and the other. Presented by our great friends over at Ironwood Golf Course, by our friends at Ballyhoo Grill. They do such a great job over there. And by our friends at Dar Shakow Insurance. Appreciate John Dar and Dar Shakow Insurance very much for being sponsors of this, you know. So this, that, and the other, we'll start off with this. This was, you guys remember when Saban, just a year and a half ago, I guess it was, came out and just blasted Jimbo Fisher. They bought a team over there. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. He was mad. And he's been mad at NIL for a long time. But it's never been about players getting money. It's been about how it's being handled. And that's me, you and me, I think all of us are in that same boat. There's some people that don't think the players should get any money. And I do understand that, but I don't agree with it. But anyway, he came out and boy, that was a big story when Saban blasted him for the NIL for buying basically a team. Well, that is that Jimbo Fisher bought himself a mighty fine team. He just didn't do a good job coaching them. And guys, sometimes you can't go and pick the nicest fruit at every bin. Sometimes the nicest fruit's not. You got to blend those fruits together. That's probably not a good analogy at all, is it? Stay away from that analogy, Pat. All right. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So anyway, that's that. And then the other is that Nick Saban leaves because of NIL, basically. I mean, NIL helped drive him out of the game. It's amazing, this whole way this thing has gone down. That is This, That, and the Other, brought to you by Ironwood, by our friends at Ballyhoo, and by Darshakow Insurance. All of them great friends. Let's get to our swamp games of the weekend. Boys, girls, men, women, children, buckle up. We got a lot coming this weekend. Now, Florida does play basketball, and you may want to watch that at 4 o'clock on ESPN. It is preceded by Tennessee at Georgia, which ought to be a good game at noon on ESPN too. But you're watching football. We all know that this weekend. The wild card games. Saturday, Cleveland at Houston is at 4:30 on NBC, going head-to-head with that Florida-Arkansas game. I don't know what that's going to do. And then Miami, Kansas City is at 8 o'clock. And for those of you who don't know, it's on the Peacock. I've got Peacock, but I guess I'll have to watch it. But I want to watch the game. Terribly, that's the game I want to watch. But you know me, I don't like it when you can't change channels. You're stuck on it for the whole day. But maybe I'll just mute it and that'll work. So those are the games on Saturday. Again, 8 o'clock on Peacock. And then Sunday, you got 3 games. Pittsburgh at Buffalo. Maybe Mike Tomlin. I got a message from Chris Hand. You remember Chris Hand, who's been on this show and, of course, was a major sponsor as well. And we appreciate him and appreciate the friendship. That's one thing. We have another sponsor. I'll tell you right now, Mike Jordan is going to stay with us through February, but then he's going to do something else with their advertising money, which I totally love the guy. I mean, but the main thing is I love the friendships I've made. Some of these people were already friends. Some of them are becoming friends or have become friends. Mike Jordan's a good example. And certainly, the people at the Swamp, we were already friends. So anyway, so what was I was at Pittsburgh and Buffalo. That's where so Chris Hand sent me he said, what if someone loses, walks away, they hire him? Alabama, he's talking about. I said, it'll be interesting. Let me tell you what, not only is this going to be interesting with 8 NFL coaching jobs to fill, Saban's job to fill, not only is it going to be interesting, but dominoes could fall and it could get crazy. I mean, really crazy out there. So that game, Pittsburgh at Buffalo, is at 1 on CBS. Green Bay at Dallas. I want to watch that game and root hard against against Dallas, but I'll watch it. But it's at 4:30 on Fox. I don't think Green Bay is going to win that game at Dallas, especially. And then the Rams are at Detroit at 8 o'clock on NBC. So what a day of football that is. And again, these are all loser leaves town games. And then finally on Monday, you've got the mighty Philadelphia Eagles against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 8:15 on ESPN. So pretty good way to wrap up a good weekend. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I love playoff football. I love playoff everything. Not hockey. I can't get into playoff hockey just because you can't, the puck, the whole thing, you can't see the puck, but it's not my problem. Not your problem. All right, let's wrap it up with another edition of Pat Dooley's Storytime. And again, as always, it is brought to you by our friends at Eastlake Pediatrics. Mike Jordan does a great job there. He'll be with us through the end of February, and we appreciate him very, very much. And like I said, these friendships that I've made with guys like Chris Hand, with guys like Mike Jordan, with guys like Scott Hart, that we have become friends. That's cool. That's a cool part of doing this, and then we'll keep it going. Keep trying to make friends. All right. So, Pat Dooley's story time. I got some bad news this week, in that a friend of mine who's the same age as me passed away. We weren't close, but we certainly were close in high school, and his name was Ronnie Swimer. He was a quarterback for the St. Augustine Yellow Jackets, and good option quarterback. In fact, it got me thinking of the story that Robbie and Tim, and I think the two Tims, both of us have brothers named Tim. It's weird. We all drove over to Palatka to watch that game. It was a huge game. And St. Augustine never beat Palatka. They do now, but they didn't then. So we went over and watched the game and partied and had a great time. And I'll never forget Ronnie Swimer running around the field with the ball in his air and running backwards and balls in his hands. I mean, the play's not over, but they've already clinched the game and everything. And I'm like, Ronnie, run forward. You don't want to cut into your total yardage. I'm already thinking like a newspaper guy. I don't, but anyway, later that night, we were in bed, and somebody threw Tim Andrew on top of me. I'm laying in bed, and I just turned and threw him off me, and it was into a plate glass window. And poor Tim Andrew, we were in the hospital all night, had multiple stitches all over his back. And I had a couple in my arm too. It was just bad thing to happen. And it just, people not third graders with beer, as we like to say. The thing is that makes Tim Andrew great. Tim Andrew still went to the Gator game that day. Even with all these stitches in his back, he had to wear a long sleeve shirt so people couldn't see him, and it was hot. Still went to the game. Gotta love him for that. Ronnie Swimer, rest in peace, my man. You were a great quarterback at St. Augustine High. I think he went to Sewanee, University of the South, somewhere to play college, but hadn't seen him in a long time, but certainly to his family, we send our prayers. All right, that is going to do it for another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Studios here in the Dooley Dome, and we'll be back with another show on Monday, and that will be Coach Spurrier, and we'll see what he thinks about all these coaches fleeing the profession. We'll have a good time with him. Until then, I am Pat Dooley for Zach, who does a great job with us and putting this thing together every Monday and Thursday. I am deep, I am way back, and I am out of here. That seemed kind of long. No, I'm fine. Fine, plus